Federico, we're back with another episode of App Stories. We have two sponsors today, Revenue Cat and Pillow. What should we talk about today, Federico? I feel like you're recovering from our App Stories Plus segment, which was a little different than typical. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to top that one for a while.
Yeah, well, we are recording this in person. I'm currently looking at John, who's in front of my desk. We're sitting in front, of my Mac Mini display, and the dogs are playing on the bed besides us. Ginger, be quiet, please. And we are doing this in person, and John surprised me on App Stories Plus with a very special surprise coming directly from America that I had to taste. So that's all I'm going to say.
It was a taste test of sorts, so it was a very unusual taste test.
And it was horrible. So please join App Stories Plus if you're interested in hearing me complaining about what John forced me to do in person. It's all for the content, in the name of the content.
It is. I traveled, 4,000 miles just with these things in my bag for you to taste. So
just for good content, the things we do for members. Yeah.
But I think for the main episode, we ought to probably get back to our core content. We ought to get back to something that you and I have been enjoying a lot over the last few months, which is the iPad mini.
The iPad mini and how we're using the iPad mini, and more specifically, how we customized the iPad mini with its home screens, and maybe even the different focus modes that we're using in combination with the home screens. So I should say up front that I love using the iPad mini.
I do too.
I really love unwinding at the end of the day with this device, but I also find myself grabbing the iPad mini during the day when I want to take a break, for example, from writing, and I want to catch up on RSS or I want to catch up on Twitter. And I think it's just a very convenient device to do that even during the day.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And we're going to talk about our home screens and the different uses we have for them. But what I've been doing with mine is, even though I have very narrow focuses for each of these home pages, I still have some of my work type apps on here, just in a very different mode. This is kind of my work apps are all in silenced focused mode, where I don't get any notifications from anything like Twitter or email or Discord or anything like that. But those apps are still available for me, so that if I'm like you and I have some time during the day when I want to take a break, maybe sit on the couch, check my email, check Twitter, I can still get at those things, but they're not on any of my home screens.
Yeah. So I also put in some my core sort of work apps on the iPad mini as well. But that's mostly because the line between what is work and what is downtime
it's very blurry for us sometimes.
Can get very blurry because I'm catching up on Twitter for work, or I'm just hanging out on Twitter, to waste a few minutes and see what's new.
Or maybe you're watching a TV show for work.
I'm watching a TV show, but the TV show is actually for work, and we're going to talk about the TV show with club members like we did last Friday with Club Mac Stories Plus and Premier members. We talked about Foundation and the entire season from Apple TV Plus. So I do have some work apps on my iPad mini. My strategy for the iPad mini is to keep those core apps in the dock, because the dock is the one element of iPadOS that is just one, right? There's just a single dock. I like the home screens. And the way you can create multiple home screens, you can create multiple pages, and you can tie those pages to a specific focus mode, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. You cannot create multiple docks. Now, there's a conversation to be had there, I think, about should you be able to have multiple docks?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, that's not something that Apple's done on any platform before. And I think there's a good argument for keeping just one dock, because it does kind of anchor the experience so that you always have one set of apps that doesn't change, which I think kind of frames and gives you context for what you're doing on whatever device you happen to be on. And yeah, I should have mentioned on my dock on my iPad mini has some work ones in it too. It is very different though than my dock on my other apps. I mean, I think the things that I would say are kind of work related are things like my calendar and messages, Discord, and Obsidian, and shortcuts. Those are some of the ones I have in my dock.
Yeah, so basically my dock is really the same. I have, it's it's a mini version of the dock from the iPad Pro. So I got shortcuts, Discord, Twitter, reminders, Remind Me, Music, Marvis Mail, and shortcuts on Obsidian. That's the the core apps that I use. But
Interesting.
the approach that I've taken with the iPad mini is to split up the experience across multiple pages. And each of those pages is based on a different activity.
Yeah, I've done basically the same thing, but let me finish up my dock because I do have 3 apps that are a little different. I've got the Home app on there because this is a device that I have with me in multiple places throughout the house. So it's great for turning on the lights or checking the temperature, dealing with the thermostat, things like that at home. I've got Concepts because I've been toying with taking notes in Concepts with the Apple Pencil and doing little drawings and mind maps and things freehand. And I've got Photos because one of the things about this iPad mini is that it's for downtime and enjoying stuff. And I like to rediscover some of my photos by having that in the dock. So that rounds up my dock. I don't have as many apps in the dock as you can fit in the dock because when it's in portrait mode, the icons just get way too small.
Yeah, me neither. Do you use the iPad mini more in portrait or in landscape?
Portrait because for reading I do use it sometimes in landscape. I tried, like on the trip here, I actually wrote a monthly log story in Obsidian on my iPad mini, and I started in landscape mode and used the keyboard, the full size keyboard, where I could see basically none of the content that I was typing, when that was no good. So then I tried split. I went portrait and I tried the split keyboard, but I don't know. I'm just awkward with that. And what I settled on was the teeny tiny swipe keyboard. And I did a whole story swiping with my one thumb as I held it in portrait mode and wrote. And I wrote about 800-900 words that way.
Swiping with one thumb.
Yeah. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't do it again, but I didn't really have enough space to open up my MacBook Air. And it was just a convenient way of doing it.
That's amazing. Okay.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Revenue Cat. If you're a developer, your time is valuable, and it shouldn't be spent focused on things like StoreKit. You should be working on what makes your app special. In-app subscriptions are critical to a lot of app success, but getting infrastructure right is really tough, unless, of course, you're using Revenue Cat. Revenue Cat is payments infrastructure simplified. You don't have to worry about managing servers or writing complex backend code. They take care of all of that for you. What's more, Revenue Cat is cross-platform, so when you decide to expand beyond iOS to things like Android or the web, you can do that too and use Revenue Cat at the same time. Plus, they've got even deeper web support coming very soon. Revenue Cat lets you sync status across all of your customers' devices. And it has terrific out-of-the-box analytics to track your revenue, customer retention, and churn, so you always are on top of how your business is performing. Revenue Cat integrates with in-app purchase data and best-in-class tools, too. And it's trusted by over 9,000 apps, including ones like Notion, StockTwits, and the photography app VSCO. Set up with Revenue Cat today. Integrating your app will take just hours, not days. So what are you waiting for? Get in-app subscription infrastructure without managing servers or writing the back-end code. To get started, just visit RevenueCat.com to learn more and sign up. There's a link in the show notes, too, which will help them know that you came from this show. Again, that's RevenueCat.com to learn more and sign up. RevenueCat, subscription management built for mobile apps. Our thanks to RevenueCat for their support of the show.
So, I guess I should add some context here on how I'm using the home screen and focus mode in general, and how I've been using it for the past almost 2 months. Really, I set this up right after I published my iOS review, when I was like catching up on all the things that I had missed before. So for the past almost couple of months, I've been keeping all of my devices in a persistent focus mode.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me.
So I created a default focus mode that is like a custom do not disturb that is on all the time. And regardless of which focus mode I use for a specific activity, which I'll get into in a few minutes, I always fall back to the one default focus mode, which I call a personal mode. So in personal mode, it allows a bunch of contacts. It allows John, my mom, Sylvia, close friends, and allows notifications from most of the apps that I use on a regular basis. And it allows also time-sensitive notifications. And it shows my default primary home screen, but it hides all of my other home screens. This is the same across the iPhone, the iPad Pro, and the iPad mini. Now, my thinking for the personal focus mode was I want to make sure that I do not get interrupted by notifications or alerts from new apps that I'm testing, or just things that messages from people that I can see later when I open the messages app. And I also don't want to see mail notifications during the day.
Okay.
My thinking was I want to make sure there's a baseline of apps and people that are allowed to communicate directly with me at all times. And I want to make sure that most of the time when I grab my phone or I grab my iPad, I only see the one page that has everything I need. And there are some similarities here between the one home screen between the iPhone, the iPad Pro, and the iPad mini. I have a calendar widget on both the iPad mini and the iPad Pro, which is an Excel calendar widget that shows me the upcoming 4 days. So it's the current day and the 3 next days of the week. I also have a large size shortcuts widget. Now, I do this because Shortcuts does not have an Excel widget on iPad, but I do have this large size widget that has my top, 8 widgets that I use the most. I think I want to do like a story eventually on the site about my Shortcuts setup for the library and what my core shortcuts are. But this is basically like the one tip I want to share today. I created a folder called Core Shortcuts, and that's a widget on all my devices. It's also on my iPhone. There's a large shortcuts widget on my primary home screen. And this has the shortcuts that I use the most on a daily basis, like Apple Frames, stopping a timer, starting up a new timer, opening Apple Music, and my dashboard shortcut for Obsidian, that kind of stuff. And then there's also a Today widget for reminders. We'll talk more about reminders over the next few months at Mac Stories, I think. It's there's something we are planning, and we'll talk more about reminders, I'm sure. Now, in addition to this, this is where it starts to diverge a little based on whether it's the iPad Pro, the iPhone, or the iPad mini.
Okay.
On the iPad mini, I have this big calendar widget, the shortcuts widget. I have the Today widget for reminders. But then I have a medium widget, which you can see, John. You can take a look at my home screen.
Yeah, I can see it right here.
There's a medium-sized shortcuts widget that has 4 shortcuts. And it's always in the same spot. So here's what I've done. I've created multiple pages.
Okay.
And on each page, this widget is always in the same spot.
Interesting.
The top 2 shortcuts in this widget are the ones that control how I switch between focus modes. There's one called Focus Modes, and there's another called Reset Focus.
Right, which goes back to the personal one?
Yes. The Reset Focus button, it always falls back to the personal focus. The Focus Modes widget brings up a list that lets me choose between these are the modes that I use all the time: music, gaming, reading, TV, and deep work. So, for example, if I pick the music focus, it switches up my home screen on the iPad mini. We're probably going to have screenshots of this in the show notes. And you can see here how I have different widgets. I have one for Apple Music. I have one for Music Harbor that shows me upcoming albums. I have a couple from Marvis Pro. One shows me my recently played albums. Another shows me the last song added to my Best of 2021 playlist. And then I have icons for Music App Store, Music Harbor, and Albums, which is another music player. But here's the core idea. It switches up the focus mode. Each focus mode, of course, blocks or mutes different apps and people. When I'm doing the music one, for example, it remove, like I want to sit down and enjoy and listen to some music, it blocks more notifications. But that medium widget is always in the same spot, so that when I hit reset, it falls back to personal.
Ah, I see.
And it looks like it gives you the impression that you are changing the current page.
Right, even though you're not.
Even though I'm not. It gives you the impression that you are refreshing the same page over and over.
Right.
But it's actually navigating back to a different page. And same if I do gaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, this should have been here, but the idea is the same. Yep. It takes me to a separate page. Or if I do, for example, sometimes, unfortunately, this is where shortcuts is kind of buggy.
Sometimes right, the list doesn't come down.
Yeah. Reading, okay, switches up to a reading home screen.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is one that I use all the time. So I have this reading home screen where I put in a bunch of icons and shortcuts. I recently wrote about how I've been using reminders as a read later application. And on this home screen, you can see how I have two large size reminders widgets, each for a different list.
Right.
There's one called short reads and there's another one called long reads. Now, if you want to get the details of how I put this together, how I've been using reminders as a read later app, I wrote all about it, all the details and the techniques that I've used in the Automation Academy for Club Mac Stories Plus and Premier members last week. So there's the shortcut you can download. But basically, I've been saving articles from Safari into reminders. And my shortcut, based on the word count of an article, automatically saves the item with a rich link in either the short reads list or the long reads list.
I like that your reader icon is the red one. That's my favorite color for that too.
Yes. On this page, so in addition to these widgets, there's also a big widget for lookup that shows me the word of the day. There's a Kindle widget that takes me back to the book that I was most recently reading. And there's another medium-sized shortcut widget that lets me very quickly either open the reminders lists that I have for my articles or opens a random article from one of my lists. For example, if I tap on random long read, it opens up an article that I saved before from 6 Scholars.
Nice.
So this is a very easy way to remove the need to choose what you want to read by just opening a random story.
Right.
Via shortcuts from reminders and in short read from The Verge, for example. So yeah, this is the overview of what I've been doing.
Let me ask you about your default, your personal focus. Don't you find that it's a bit of a hassle to deal with that in that, I don't know, it feels like always being in a focus mode is work because you have to constantly be deciding what apps and what people are in and out of that. And what does it look like if I go to messages and I'm trying to text you? What is that going to look like in your personal mode? It doesn't say that you're in focus mode, does it? On that one, it does. Maybe that's why you're constantly.
I'm always in focus mode. If you try to get in touch with me on iMessage, it's always going to say focus mode is enabled.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I guess that's true. You are in it a lot, and I don't really worry about. I mean, like I'll just send you a message, and I know you'll see it when you're done being in whatever focus you're in.
But I'm always in focus, so that's the thing. Like I wish that I could. I wrote about this in my review. I wish that I could have different status messages.
Yeah, definitely.
Based on the focus that I'm in. Like if I'm in the deep work focus, I don't want people to text me.
Right. Like if I knew you're in the deep focus mode, I would think twice about sending you the message.
Right.
Whereas if I know you're in the personal mode, I know you're just,
right.
I can get, it's just, I can send you the message. No problem. Interesting.
Right. So to answer your question, everything about this is a lot of work.
Yeah, especially the home screens, I know. I mean, that's...
Exactly. So while the focus modes, they sync between devices, so the basic settings for focus modes, like the people that you allow, and the focus mode itself, like the color and the name, and the apps that you allow, those settings, they sync across devices with iCloud.
Mm-hmm.
The home screens do not. So on each device, I had to manually design a home screen for each mode. And I'm still not done. I showed you this morning. Right. I'm not done on the iPad Pro, on the big one. But both on the iPhone and the iPad mini, I had to go in and recreate the same page on each device. And sometimes in earlier versions of iOS and iPadOS 15,
they would get mixed up.
They would get reset
by
the system. And so I had to go into settings again and pick, and you have to do this on each device, right? You have to go into the settings for each focus mode and say, when I'm in this mode on this device, I want to see these home screens. I had to repeat this process for my iPhone, my iPad mini, and my iPad Pro. I can tell you, it was a lot of work. It was a it was a long weekend project.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, Federico is about a month out from having done his iOS and iPadOS review. I'm only like a week out from having done macOS. I'm not nearly as far along as you because I haven't had the time to spend that to do this on a weekend. But I've been doing some of this myself.
Show me.
All right. So I'm actually playing with my focus modes right now. But what I've done is
I'm looking at John using his iPad mini. There's a few more pages, I think. No, maybe.
Yeah, it's about 5 pages. So I have not done as much with focus modes. I do have focus modes. I have focus modes for things like writing, which turns off most of the notifications for apps and people. I have another one for driving, does something similar. But I haven't really spent a lot of time creating special pages. Although on my iPhone, I do have one where I'm doing app testing, which has a special home screen that actually pulls up a whole bunch of betas that I'm testing. So those are apps that I'm not testing every single day, but I want to check out. So like maybe on a Saturday morning, I'll switch to that focus mode and I'll look at all those betas at one time. But my main homepage is a reading homepage, and it has some similarities to Federico's. I've got a Readwise quote widget on here, which I probably shouldn't have because I don't have that many highlights in Readwise yet, and so it's almost always the same. But it is kind of nice once in a while. If you have good quotes, nice to see a good quote or two. And I've got a reader widget that has the ones that are tagged personal, which are kind of my personal related. They're not really Mac stories related. They're not something I'm going to write about. They're not something I'm researching. They're not, that kind of thing. Maybe it's world news or something. Maybe it's just something I didn't have time to read. So that's on there. And then I've just got a bunch of series of apps. I'm trying out that Matter app, the Read Later app. Got that on there. I've got Kindle and books. I had the Kindle widget on here too before when I was reading a Kindle book, but once I was done with that, I got rid of it. I wish books would have that kind of widget where you can, if you're reading a book, it's really nice just to have a little reminder there on the home screen that, oh, here's the book I'm reading. Tap it once and you go right back to where you left off, which you can do with a Kindle. And then I've got Reader. I've got Tweet Shelf, which is an app that I think I've mentioned before that collects articles that are linked by the people you follow on Twitter, and it ranks them based on how many times they're linked by people in your follower.
Tweet Shelf.
Yeah, Tweet Shelf.
Okay, I'm looking for it right now.
And it's a little bit like Nuzzle. That's kind of where when Nuzzle got bought by who bought Nuzzle? Twitter bought it, right? Yeah. And they shut it down. So and this is I learned about this from people who were upset about that, and it has at times it's been a little buggy, but it's gotten a lot better. So I'm using that, and it's not just for articles; it's got for podcasts and things like that. So you can get some good discoveries there. My second page is a combination of music and TV and video, really, because I've got for the video side of things, I've got the Channels app, which I use with my Plex server and my over-the-air TV at home, HBO Max, YouTube, and Apple's TV app. Then with audio, it's mostly music, but I've got Overcast on here because once in a while I found one of the things about the iPad mini is that it's nearly as portable as having the big phone, the big Pro Max. So this iPad mini is with me more times during the day than my iPad Pro for sure. I'm reading in bed or I'm sitting on the couch, whatever it happens to be. So I found listening to podcasts through it is kind of nice. I've also got Music Harbor and Marvis, as well as Apple Music. And I've got some widgets. I've got the Marvis Pro extra large widget, which I really like because it's simple. That just shows you, playback controls for your current selection, as well as the song that's coming up next, and artwork. And it's one of the best looking widgets out there, I think. And then I've got a TV Plus widget that shows me shows that are, I guess it's showing me shows that have been watched recently. These all look like shows that Jennifer was watching, probably. And then a reader widget that shows me things tagged with music in my RSS feeds. And that's one of the, I guess, the themes of my pages is that I've even though this is a small device, I've been using widgets liberally because to me, the widgets are like the entry into the media that I'm consuming. You get a reminder of here's the music you're listening to, here are the videos you're watching, here are the books you're reading. And I find it really handy that way. The games one is especially good that way because I don't like to have a ton of games on my iPad mini at one time. I only have a handful, but I've got 3 large widgets that are divided, and they're all Apple News widgets, and they're for PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. And I've got 3 headlines from each one. Just kind of a nice way to get up on the news for the major consoles, as well as Fantasian, Alto's Odyssey, Lost City, and Townscaper, which I haven't played with a lot yet, but I want to check that out. And then
for games, I really like the Game Center widget.
Yeah, I need to add that. I haven't added that to my games page
because
yet.
Even though I don't care about Game Center multiplayer and achievements, it's a really cute, like it's visually attractive widget that has the custom artwork for the last game you played usually from Apple Arcade. Like you can see how in this big widget right here that I have, there's this beautiful tiny wings background that I think it looks really lovely. And it serves as nice. A very, very quick launch pad into games because it's got the most recent one and 3 icons for other games you can quickly launch from the home screen. And I would also recommend using the sofa widget. So I've been tracking the games that I want to play or that I'm playing right now with sofa. And I have a games list. And I added it as an Excel widget to the gaming home screen on my iPad mini. So that's a nice way to see all the games that I have on deck right now.
I just added the Game Center Excel widget, and it's completely blank.
Oh, give it
a minute or two, I guess.
Give it a minute or two to load, maybe.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Pillow. More and more studies show that getting a good night's sleep can help you improve your health and general well-being. Pillow is a simple app that can help you be more aware of your sleep patterns and make informed decisions that will help you improve your sleep quality. All you have to do is wear your Apple Watch to sleep, and Pillow will give you a complete report in the morning about how well you slept. If you want to use Pillow with just an iPhone or an iPad, you can do that too, with just the press of a single button. And if you have an Apple Watch, you can also get important information about your heart rate, the trends, variability, heart rate dips, and blood oxygen levels for every single sleep session. You can even record sounds like sleep talking, sleep apnea, snoring, and other noises that you hear during the night that may be affecting your sleep. And if you have an Apple Watch Series 6 or newer, Pillow will also display information about the intensity of those sounds during each sleep session and give you a rating for each exposure. Another valuable aspect of Pillow is the ability to make informed decisions about your sleep. Pillow comes with a dedicated section that helps you discover trends, get personal insights, sleep tips, and easily compare your sleep metrics to other health metrics like weight, steps, caffeine consumption, and a whole lot more. If you want to wind down or relax before you go to sleep or listen to something throughout the night, Pillow comes with an expanding collection of sleep aid sounds, guided meditations, bedtime stories, and music produced specifically for sleep. Pillow can also wake you up using your iPhone, Apple Watch, or iPad at the lightest possible sleep stage using its smart alarm feature. Starting from watchOS 6, Pillow's battery consumption is minimal too. And last but not least, Pillow is very privacy-minded. All of your sleep and audio data is encrypted and is stored on your device and in your iCloud storage account using end-to-end encryption. You don't have to register or create an account to use Pillow. You can use it completely anonymously, and it doesn't collect or send your personal data anywhere else. Pillow is free to download from the App Store today and comes with a great set of features that you can use every single day for free. If you want to try Pillow's premium features, there's an option for a 7-day free trial too. Just visit pillow.app to get started and learn more. Again, that URL is pillow.app. Our thanks to Pillow for their support of the show. All right, let me talk about
the research page.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that.
The research page is where this all started. Well, I guess it started with the reading page, but the research page is the page that I really like because one of the things I realized is that while the iPad mini is an iPad that I want to use mostly for downtime, for things like reading or music, it is really handy for research because research is mostly reading and maybe doing a little bit of writing. And so this is a way for me at the end of the day or maybe on a Saturday morning or something to sit on the couch and start looking at a bunch of apps and researching various projects. Now, first of all, and this is, it's kind of extravagant, I guess, to have a large widget on an iPad mini that says nothing on it but research in a monospace.
There's a widget that says research.
And it's a label. And the reason I put a label on this one but not the other ones is because it's a really weird combination of apps, but they're right, but they're all related to
like
research.
The title of the page. How did you put that together?
I used Widgetsmith.
Of course.
Very easy.
It's a text widget.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a black widget with white text on it that says research. And I chose those colors because it's kind of blends in with some of the other stuff here. But I've got, let's run through a few of these. I've got highlights.
So how do you add apps manually to this page?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
These these are the apps that I'm testing. I'm adding them to this page.
Oh, no. This is not for testing. This is more for I'm reading and researching. This is not trying apps page. These are supporting research, right? So I've got the App Store and Test Flight.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So I might, if I'm using
I was confused because I saw Test Flight and a beta of Apollo, and I figured, these are the apps that is testing.
No, they're not. Apollo happens to be a beta I'm testing, but Apollo's here because I use Reddit to do some research, right?
Okay. So different kinds of research. Okay.
Different sources, right? So there's Apollo for Reddit. There's Mighty Search, which is a beta that's not out, which is for searching Twitter, for doing complex Twitter searches. I've got Good Links, because I like to save a lot of links in there when I'm doing research and tag it. I've got our Release Spot app that is an internal Mac Stories app for seeing what the most recent updated apps are that we follow. And that's usually a place that I start. I've got the Command Browser, because the Command Browser is one of these browsers that allows you to do highlighting, a lot like how Quick Notes works, but it integrates with things like Readwise, and I have Readwise here too. So I can go, if I'm doing specifically researching, instead of going to Safari, I'll sometimes go into the Command Browser, take a bunch of, do a bunch of highlighting, shoot it over to Readwise, and then it dumps into Obsidian using their plugin. So that's why this is like this. Now, the other widgets I'm using here are, I've got a Good Links widget, which is all of my links that are tagged Unwind. Because what's really handy is if you and I are recording Unwind and we have our Unwind picks, I just look at this and I've got 2 or 3 things that I watched or listened to or whatever recently, and I can tap into them and get the details and talk about them. And then I have another reader widget, which I love readers widgets. And this one is just like my Apple News folder. It's all the feeds that are related to Apple. So I can, if I want to just do kind of like catch up reading on what's going on in the Apple world, that's where I start. There's a shortcuts widget on here, but it's not really set up yet. I have to put some research related things here. But yeah, this is, and highlights is on here too, because sometimes, sometimes the research is PDFs and you want to do some highlighting there. And that too, I can shoot over to Readwise and eventually into Obsidian. I wouldn't say that this is the best way to do highlights reading. I think the big iPad is better for that, but at a pinch, it's okay because it doesn't have to be in split view. You can have it in like PDF only view and then use the Apple Pencil to do the highlighting.
Very nice.
That's my favorite one. That's my favorite one. I have an experimental page too.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So I think we're both using multiple pages as a way to organize
and
activities.
widgets.
And with lots of widgets. So I think that definitely shows the benefit of bringing widgets to the iPad home screen this year, because it allows you to sort of theme these pages, and have these launchers that, really do a nice job at putting together and giving a purpose to a page, And I guess the one tip that I want to, again, remind people, that the thing that I'm doing that I think it really works out nicely, if you want to create, especially on the iPad mini, because I think it is the kind of device that lends itself well to a multi-home screen approach. If you want to tie those multiple home screens to focus modes like I'm doing, consider this technique of you always see just one page.
One layout, basically.
Just one layout. I don't have the page indicators at the bottom of my iPad. At all times,
that's really interesting.
I'm in one layout, one page only. But there's always a widget in the same spot on the home screen
Right.
that lets me navigate between focus modes. There are 4 home screens, but it gives you the illusion that you are refreshing the same page over and over. And when you hit the reset button, it just changes the widgets and the apps. That gives you that sense of, oh, it's always the same page, but it actually isn't.
Yeah.
And it's always more convenient to use shortcuts to change between focus modes instead of control center, because you don't have to reach out to the top right corner of the screen to open control center and manually trigger the focus mode, which is too many taps to do that.
Right. No, this is a great technique. I really like this tip. I mean, it's a cool tip. I think the other thing we should talk about, just mention briefly, is that the reason that widgets work so well on something as small as the iPad mini is the app library, because you can still have those other apps. I mean, I've got Spark on here and Todoist, a bunch of other things that are kind of work related, but they're all in the app library and they're easy to get to with Spotlight Search or just going over to the app library.
And if you want to have multiple, if you want to have the same app on multiple pages, like for example, if I want to have App Store on both my main page, but also on the gaming page or also on the music page, I can do that thanks to the app library.
Right.
Because in iPadOS 15, you can grab the same app from like the same icon from the app library, and you can create duplicate icons basically on multiple home screens.
Yeah, I've done that with Reader especially because it's both on my reading page and on my research page, for instance. All right, Federico, that was a really good episode. I have a long way to go. I haven't even touched my iPad Pro. You saw my iPad Pro when we were testing.
Yeah, mine's kind of messy too.
Yeah, mine's kind of a disaster at this point, and it's a project for another weekend.
Well, that's because I went from the iOS 15 review to the iPad mini. And so I figured I'm going to really dig in and clean up the iPad mini home screen. And so the big iPad Pro is still waiting there like post September season. It's still waiting to be organized.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. And I started with the iPad mini because it was the new thing that had been delivered to my house and I was excited about it. And I especially wanted to take this new approach to it. All right. Well, I want to thank our two sponsors again for this episode, Revenue Cat and Pillow. If you want to learn what Federico taste tested today,
don't remind me about
a little bit of American culture, you can subscribe to App Stories Plus.
It was an American horror story. It was American culture.
It was a bit of a horror story, but it's, not long since Halloween. It's a good time for horror stories. But, App Stories Plus is extended, ad-free, and you get higher bitrate audio. So we sound amazing. Plus you get those extra segments of Federico taste testing things. So check out that at appstories.plus if you want to subscribe and learn more. And you can find the two of us over at macstories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram where he is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.